What's up, everybody? Welcome into this special Wednesday preview edition of the Week 13 NFL slate. This show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Mike Renner, JP Acosta here, coming to you, not quite live. I'm doing this little pre-record on a Wednesday, but we're going to do the whole slate, the Thanksgiving game, the Friday game, the Sunday slate, and Monday Night Football. Obviously, you could be listening to this any of the next few days. So before we get to that, though, JP, I did an article on CBSSports.com called The Top 10 Players for the 2027 Draft Class. I know it's crazy. We are way too early for that. So basically, sophomores who aren't currently draft eligible. But I spent the past few days going through tape of a bunch of the top guys that I've heard, some guys who were maybe off the beaten path. And I came across one guy whose tape just blew me away. Because I'd heard whispers about him. I'd seen some highlights from him, never really dug into the tape. But North Texas quarterback Drew Mestemaker, the coolest story in college football, is not only just a cool story in college football. I think this guy is a legit NFL quarterback prospect. So if you don't know, starting quarterback at North Texas, he leads all of college football in yards per attempt. He has not started a game of football. So he started last year in the bowl game, but has not been a starter since his freshman year of high school. The guy is a marvel. Now his head coach, Eric Morris, just got the job at OK State. Kind of a big controversy there because he's recruiting people at OK State, but kind of involved still in North Texas. We'll see how that ends up shaking out. But this guy is going to be the jewel of the transfer portal, blown away by how good his tape was.
He's so good, man. I remember talking to one of my friends actually during that bowl game, and I was like, hey, this Mestemaker kid's pretty good. Like he was slinging the ball in that game, and to see him grow from where he was at that point to who he is now, he's still got a little bit of the reckless air raid quarterback to him. But some of the passes he puts on tape are like real, like 1% NFL type of throws. So I'm excited for the 2027 class. Of course, you have the Jeremiah Smith, Cam Coleman, Dylan Stewart. Like those guys are going to be at the top of the class. Yep. I'm so curious how that class shakes out because we're looking at potentially like a really, really loaded class at the top.
Yeah, I mean, people mentioned it as kind of a justification for some of the trades that went down at the deadline. If you're a smart team, I would load up. I'm even in my dynasty leagues. I'm trying to load up on 2027 draft picks because it's not only, Cam Coleman, Jeremiah Smith, who you mentioned, but like Ryan Wingo from Texas, Mario Craver from Texas A&M. There are so many receiver prospects. I think that running back class is going to be insane too. Ahmad Hardy from Missouri looks like an absolute dude. Kawan Lacey from Ole Miss looks like he's going to be a dude. It's a talented class, and you can tell already. So cutting it down to 10 was tough. If you want to see who the 10 were, go check it out on CBSSports.com.
Might also be getting the Arch Manning 2027.
Yes, right. And you'll get a lot of quarterbacks coming back is the other interesting thing. Like I just did rising sophomore. So guys who aren't currently draft eligible. And I found 10 guys who I'm like, damn, if these 10 guys were in this year's class, they'd all be top 20 picks. And they'll have a lot of guys, I think, who are eligible this year who could come out, borderline, come back, raise their draft stock. It could be like the 2021 class is what I liken it to this far out, where you kind of knew going in, you had Jamar Chase, you had Penei Sewell, you had Micah Parsons. I mean, all those guys literally didn't play there last year. So you knew it. They ended up being top 10 picks alongside Jalen Waddle. Like it was just a loaded class. You could tell that far out. I think the next 2027 could be very much like that one. All season long here, heading up to the playoffs, Cash App is sponsoring our locks. We'll track how we're doing each episode with the winner being presented with a Cash App Locks trophy at the end of the season. Last week, I went 3-2. JP went 2-3. Kyle went 1-3. I'm creeping back towards 50. I got to get over 50 by the end of the season. Obviously, I think I'm a long shot to get to 55, which is the making money barrier. But I just need to get back over 50 and say I wasn't flipping a coin all season long. I at least got to beat Kyle, though. At least we're both doing that.
Yeah, we just got to beat Kyle. It's going to be a long road back to 50 for me. I kind of got screwed by the Seahawks-Titans game being close. But we're on the way back. We're shaking back this week. It's Turkey week. It's Turkey Day. We're going to get some big wins.
I did not start off hot with a Thursday night game. And then Cam Ward putting up, that Seahawks-Titans game going over almost on each team on their own. But 3-2, I'll take it. If I just keep going 3-2 the rest of the way, we're going to be above 500 very soon. All right, let's get to the games here. Not the best of slates. Honestly, Thursday and Friday, elite Thanksgiving slate. Like elite Thanksgiving and Black Friday, could not ask for a better, but then they kind of robbed Sunday of all the good games. So we'll start with Bills Steelers. Probably that one and the Texans Colts, really the most intriguing games this weekend. Bills 3.5-point favorites traveling on the road to Pittsburgh. 47.5 points is the over-under. And the playoff probabilities here. Per PFF, if the Bills win, 93% chance of making the playoffs. If they lose, 66% chance of making the playoffs. On the flip side, Steelers, if they win, 48% chance of making the playoffs. With a loss, 19% chance of making the playoffs. The Steelers, technically, as it stands right now, on the outside looking in, don't have the tiebreaker with Ravens, but that's going to get settled on the football field here coming up shortly.
This is this week's anxiety bowl, just for both teams. The Bills need to win in a big way. They need to get back to blowing teams out. They need to get back to winning comfortably against, I would say this is a quality opponent. This is a tough Steelers team to play, but this Steelers team needs a win in the biggest way just to get back into the good vibes of the team. And something that I noticed last week against the Bears was they flipped their entire defense. You know how we talked about, like, hey, they're playing a lot more too high. They're playing Jalen Ramsey at safety. It looked a lot more like a modern NFL defense. Yeah, they threw all that out the window on Sunday. And according to Penn Live's Nick Farabaugh, Patrick Queen was asked about the issues that the team had with receivers running wide open yesterday. And Patrick Queen said, I think it was some of the schematic issues we had. It's kind of hard for two guys that are underneath defenders to try and guard two routes. That's overhang the hashes and stuff. As much as you try to get a bang on or whatever, it's hard to do that, and it's a hard spot to be in. It's not great to have schematic issues in week 12, one, and two, when you've been running the same defense for 30 years. This is sort of the issue that we had with the Steelers going into the season. It feels like they've run the same stuff for the last 30 years, spot drop, cover three. The 4 verts touchdown Caleb Williams threw was against spot drop cover 3, and nobody carries DJ Moore from the slot, and he's wide open to run into the end zone. So I wonder how they're going to defend the Bills team that also poses a threat running the football. I believe Mike Tomlin said with the success that the Bears had running play action, it forced them to go a little more single high so they could stop the run. I wonder how that's going to work out against a Bills team that wants to run the ball at them. And you don't have Derek Harmon in this game. That spells disaster for the Steelers defense.
I was cracking up watching that Moore touchdown on the All-22 because it was quite literally like what you draw up on a whiteboard. You're like, if we get 4 guys vertical and they only have 3 deep, no one can get this. Like it was just as perfectly done as it looks. And it's like, it's 2025. Spot drop cover 3 is the most demolished coverage of the past 15 years. Like truly, like it just every single offense in the NFL has answers for it because everyone was trying to play cover 3 after Seattle put it in vogue, but even they didn't do pure spot drop. It was like the matchup zone principles of it was the evolution of it. So if you're still doing spot drop cover 3, you're just begging to give up plays like that. The Bills have to win this game. Like every matchup to me says they should win this game, whether it's that tackle duo that should theoretically be able to handle the edge rushers of the Pittsburgh Steelers, whether it's the fact that this is a top 3 rushing offense going up against one of the 6 off defenses in the NFL that is allowing positive EPA per rush this season. I wanted to make this one of my locks, the Bills minus 3.5. The only reason I didn't, I think, is because I made it one of my locks last week and it burned me. And I was like, okay, I thought they're going to beat the Texans with Davis Mills. I think they should beat the Steelers with Mason Rudolph. Now, there's optimism for Rodgers to play. We'll see what happens there. Even if Rodgers plays, this feels like the Bills should just run away with this, in my opinion.
So first thing for the Bills is, did you see that they signed Brandon Cooks to help their receiver room out?
That was the spot. That was the spot he wanted. They can't have enough guys who are under 6 foot, run in the 4.3s, but just can't actually get open.
They're making their hay off of guys who don't actually get open, but are very fast. And they are looking for It's funny because the Chiefs and the Bills are both looking for Tyreek Hill and the same archetypes and body types they look for. But I'm really curious if Spencer Brown is healthy for this game, the Bills' right tackle, because if he's not healthy, I feel like the Steelers can kind of grimy this game up, especially because with the way Spencer Brown looked on Thursday, it was awful. I mean, he was giving up pressures to everybody. Of course, Will Anderson Jr., Daniel Hunter are arguably the best defensive end tandem in football. But this week you're going up against TJ Watt, Nick Herbig, Alex Highsmith, who all try and rush to the high side with speed. So I'm curious if Spencer Brown is healthy. I'm curious if I believe Connor McGovern went out of that game with injury. I don't feel comfortable putting any locks on this game because I just don't think the Bills are going to run away with this one. I don't think their offense is going to run away with it, despite the defensive issues we've said about the Steelers, despite Aaron Rodgers coming back from a wrist injury. I just feel like this Bills offense is in need of some new ideas, just some freshening up of the ideas. They run a lot of mesh, they run a lot of mesh traffic, and you can tell that teams are just sitting on all of those routes on third down. So I think the Bills win, but I think this game is a lot closer than people think.
Even with, what if I told you, so DK Metcalf is going to be limited this week in practice with an injury. What if I told you DK Metcalf and Aaron Rodgers aren't going for the Steelers?
Oh, the Bills win this by like 20. I have no faith in Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, I don't as well. Let's get to the other big game over the weekend. Texans at Colts. Colts 4.5-point favorites. 44.5 is the over-under here. And when I say big game, I mean it. This has the single biggest playoff implications because this has the single biggest swings in playoff odds for the winners and losers. The Colts with a win, 90% chance of making the playoffs. With a loss, only 55% chance of making the playoffs. Texans with a win, 70% chance of making the playoffs. With a loss, 32% chance of making the playoffs. Those are the two biggest swings for each team in terms of playoff probabilities with wins and losses this weekend.
Nothing's ever normal in the AFC South. As a fans of AFC South team, I'm telling you, this division is like Mad Max Fury Road. Nothing you see is going to be normal. So I'm really curious about this game because it's going to come down to how Daniel Jones performs under pressure. In the first 8 weeks of the season, Daniel Jones, under pressure, when pressured, had a 43.9% success rate, 6 touchdowns, no interceptions, 0.04 EPA per dropback, 11% sack rate, all very good numbers. Since week 8, Daniel Jones has had a 28.6 success rate under pressure. No touchdowns, no picks, negative 0.86 EPA per dropback, and a 42.9% sack rate, according to True Media. He has been awful against pressure since then. And it's bad because you can tell he's reverting back to pumpkin mode. It felt like this version of Daniel Jones we saw through the first 8 weeks of the season. It felt like Cinderella getting the carriage, and now the pumpkin's starting to turn back. And this is not a great game to turn back into a pumpkin against. This is not a great defense to turn back into a pumpkin against, because this Texans defense is going to hammer you with their front four. They have to get Jonathan Taylor going. They have to get him involved and have to keep him involved if they're going to win the football game. Last week during the Chiefs game, all I could think about was Shane Steichen a few years ago saying, you pass the ball to score points, but you run the ball to win the game. And it felt like they just didn't run the ball a lot. I felt like they got kind of spooked off by the Chiefs being in base defense and just being like, we're not going to let you run the ball on us. So I wonder how the Texans defend this Colts offense. But Daniel Jones under pressure has to be the guy that we saw in weeks 1 through 8. This offensive line has given up a lot of pressures, especially unblocked pressures. So I'm curious if the Texans do blitz him a little bit, try and heat him up and speed up his clock, because we saw at Texans or the Chiefs game where if you just speed him up a little bit and start to get him thinking that there's pressures that aren't actually there, he'll make mistakes.
On the flip side, though, we still don't know if CJ Stroud's playing. Is the silver lining here for the Colts. He is still technically in concussion protocol. Worrisome, obviously, given how long that's been for him now, a few weeks in it. So Not a sure thing to play in this. When he does clear, he will be the starter, DeMeco Ryan says, but obviously still has to clear. I will say this, though, about the Colts. The absolute funniest outcome for this season, because their schedule down the stretch is this Texans game, Jaguars, Seahawks, 49ers, Jaguars, Texans. There's not another like chalk up a win on their schedule. Funniest outcomes a 9-8 season for the Indianapolis Colts. For the they've had either 8 or 9 wins in 4 of the last 5 seasons already. Making that 5 of the last 6 would be easily the funniest outcome. Now, I think they can sneak out 2 of these games down the stretch at least. You get 2 of these games, you're more than likely in the playoffs in the AFC. But the fact that the Jags and the Texans kind of have their whole, they get their opportunity to make up ground, because as it stands right now in that division, 8-3 Colts, 7-4 Jags, 6-5 Texans. So both of them, if they both can take those 2 games against the Colts, all they have to do is match the Colts record in the other games, and they are your champs. So I think that the South is easily the most intriguing division here in the NFL down the stretch, because it truly is a 3-horse race. Any of them could take the division.
And it's worth noting that the last time the Colts beat the Jaguars in Jacksonville, I believe it was the last time the Colts beat the Jacksonville Jaguars in Jacksonville. I was 14 years old.
Oh my gosh.
They haven't beaten the Jaguars in Jacksonville. So again, I'm not saying that it's going to happen.
They won 1-15. That was the one. That was the one game. It was the Gardner Minshew.
I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I am saying the Jaguars always beat the Colts in Jacksonville. If the Colts split with the Texans and Jaguars, they'd have to beat the Seahawks and the Niners. And then you'd have to go and you got to get one of those games. You got to get one of those games to in Indianapolis to win the division.
It will be fun to watch going forward. All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we're going to roll quickly through the rest of the Sunday and Monday slate, as there's some tight spreads. There's a lot of big spreads. There's some tight spreads, but the tight spreads are between the games that probably aren't going to want to watch. So we'll roll through that quickly right after this.
You can't count on accurate expiration dates.
That is a rookie mistake.
Or the kindness of strangers. But thanks to CBS Sports, you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus.
Rams are 10.5-point favorites traveling to Carolina. Over under here is 45.5 points. The Rams, 37% chance of making the playoffs if they win this game, 19% if they lose this game.
This game should not be close, I don't think. The Panthers play a really weird front. They play a lot of, and I think we talked about it on Monday night, they play a lot of that mint front that you'll see in college football, especially against like 11 personnel. But they're also not very good at defending the run outside of Derek Brown. So I wonder if this is a Rams 13 personnel and we're just going to hammer you over and over type of game, because the Panthers aren't very good at defending 13 personnel. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL defending 13 personnel. So I just think that this Rams game, I just don't think it's going to be close. I think the pass rush is going to be able to really turn up on the Panthers, who don't really have a great pass protecting unit. And if you put Bryce Young in obvious drop back situations against this defense that's firing on all cylinders, I just feel like this game is going to end up being a little bit ugly.
I found this stat earlier this week from Timo Riske, who's a data scientist at PFF. And I thought this was fascinating. And one of, I think, the more underrated aspects of playing quarterback. The Rams and Matt Stafford, obviously, have targeted wide receivers on the highest percentage of dropbacks in the entire NFL this year. So, like, how many percent of your plays end in throwing the ball literally at a receiver, targeting someone, not throwing it away, not having a sack, not scrambling, actually end in targets? 90% of their dropbacks. And the next best in the NFL is 86%. That's the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott. Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young, he's at 78%. So that means basically 1 out of 8 or so of your dropbacks is just not getting thrown at a wide receiver. That's once a drive where, whether it's a sack, throwaway, that you're more likely, I mean, sometimes scramble can be a positive EPA play, but more than likely just losing a play in a way that the Rams aren't. I think that's such a, I don't want to say inefficiency, but that's such a underrated aspect of playing quarterback that, kind of the last generation of quarterbacks really understood, guys like Phillip Rivers, guys like Tom Brady, that a sack is a horrible play. Throwaway is not a good play. Just give your guys chances more often than not. And I think this Rams offense, obviously it helps when guys are getting open, but this Rams offense is really making hay in just giving Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams, just give them chances to make plays.
And I think that the Panthers have that ability with Teteroa McMillan. You have the ability just to go and give him a shot. You have the ability to go and get Jalen Coker just to give him a shot at getting the ball. So I do think that this game for the Panthers offense is going to be really fascinating. Again, Rams are one of the best defenses in the NFL. I wonder how the personnel shakes out. JT Sanders did not have a great day on Monday. So I wonder if you play more Tommy Tremble, if you play more Mitchell Evans. Like, is this going to be we're going to try and ground and pound the Rams and keep the offense off the field? Because that might be their best shot at winning this game.
I don't want to see another snap of JT Sanders. I think I said it earlier this year, and it still holds true now. All right, let's get to Vikings at Seahawks. Seahawks 11.5-point favorites. 41.5 points is the over-under here. Seahawks actually have a lot riding on this game. A fairly big swing in playoff percentage odds with a win and loss. 94% with a win, 73% with a loss. Obviously, though, this is the biggest spread of the weekend.
So I need to ask you a question about this game. What is a funnier outcome? Max Brosmer plays average and the Vikings beat the Seahawks, or the Vikings lose and Max Brosmer plays incredible?
I think it's the latter. I think Brosmer just like lighting it up. Obviously, like the defense may be letting him down in that scenario. I think that's the funniest outcome, just as not only someone who's, as a Packers fan, like when a division rival is really tying themselves in knots over their quarterback, shall we say, like the things I've seen out of Minnesota Vikings, radio personalities, people who cover the team, fans of that, like things of that nature, and like Michigan fans too, has just been insane to try to rationalize this. They've been blaming KOC for this. And I saw someone say he didn't land in the right situation to develop. That was easily the craziest take I've ever heard on JJ McCarthy, that he didn't land in the right situation. So having Brosmer play outstanding and not have any of the same issues with the exact same supporting cast would definitely be the best way to tie them in even more knots of trying to justify what's happened with JJ McCarthy.
See, I actually think it's the former. I think Brosmer playing average and the Vikings win is a lot funnier because it shows you just how much the Vikings would win games if JJ McCarthy wasn't the worst quarterback in football. Yeah. Like if he just was okay, like the Vikings would be a lot better off. I do think that this game could potentially lend some shenanigans. I think Max Brosmer did some really nice stuff in the preseason, especially throwing the ball over the middle of the field. And something that I do think I don't think KOC is like 100% to blame for JJ McCarthy, like absolutely flaming out. Sometimes a quarterback just might not have it, but he does call a lot of 7-step drops, a lot of we're going to go get chunk plays. And JJ McCarthy just doesn't really have. I said it on social media. JJ McCarthy has the internal clock of a deer, where like if there's a car right in front of him, he's gonna stand there. Like he just has no feel for the game. Where like on a few of sacks against the Packers, he's just standing in the pocket, just available lanes to the left or his right, and he's just not moving. He's not making the game easier on himself. But then there will be plays where there is nowhere to move, and he's like trying to duck and spin out of the pocket. And it's just like, man, why didn't you do that on the other play where there was a pocket to move around in? And in this one, you're just kind of bailing on clean pockets. So I think Brosmer has a chance to just show some clean, competent quarterback play. But I do think the Seahawks still win this one. I think that this is a really fascinating game to see if the Seahawks run game can get something going. But I think the whole entire Brosmer experience could end up being very funny.
But see here, the thing we haven't mentioned, though, is that if Brosmer plays great and they lose, it would mean Sam Darnold probably played great. And that would be the icing on the cake for Vikings fans, seeing Sam Darnold just light them up. But actually the most interesting matchup to me is Darnold versus Flores. Flores saw him in practice. Flores saw him all last year. He knows that he's willing to give you chances to make plays, whether it's via fumbles, whether it's via the air, that there can be picks. There are picks to be had if and when Sam Darnold gets skittish. So I think the game plan Minnesota has against Sam Darnold is the most interesting thing. And that's why I kind of like the under in this one. I don't know if 11.5, I don't feel good about the Vikings scoring much themselves and covering that, but I also like the under because I think the Vikings have a good game plan on how to stop Sam Darnold.
And something that the Vikings do a lot, and it's worth noting that Sam Darnold since week 9 is third in the NFL in turnover-worthy throw rate. Like that part of his game has not left since he's been in Minnesota and since he's been in Seattle. I believe he has 10 interceptions this season. And of course, 4 of those came in the meltdown against the Rams. So, that 4 in one game isn't exactly like terrible, but he has 10 interceptions this season. And I think the thing that Brian Flores does really well is he gets pressure up the middle of the defense with his Mike linebacker and then drops both edges. He does that better than anybody else in the NFL, and he'll cloudy the middle of the field reads. Because you have guys like Eric Wilson, who's actually played a lot more on the edge, and I've been kind of wondering why, because Eric Wilson is not a pass rusher off-ball linebacker. Like when you think of Eric Wilson, you're not thinking of like a guy like Jahad Campbell or Zach Bond. Like Eric Wilson's like 6'1", 225. Like he's an off-ball linebacker, but they have him lined up on the edge and they'll drop him in the coverage while they bring Blake Cashman or Ivan Pace on a blitz. So I wonder how much they do that just to cloudy Sam Darnold's reads. And if they do get that, just run the ball at him. But that's where sort of the rubber has met the road for the Seahawks is can they get a ground game going?
And that will be even more, what's the word I'm looking for here? Important or effective because Olu Atimi has not been what Jalen Sundell was at center for the Seattle Seahawks. He is slower footed. If you get him with cross dogs up the middle, I think there could be issues there in terms of blitz pickup for that Seahawks offensive line. But that's all predicated on staying out of third and longs, right? If they can just get positive gains with the run, if they can get positive gains off play action early on, Seahawks will just refuse to drop back pass, refuse to get their offensive line even a chance to get beat. So that cat and mouse game will be very interesting to watch. Let's get to Raiders at Chargers. Chargers 9.5-point favorites. 41.5 points is the over-under. And I think the Raiders have moved firmly into Titans territory of, I just don't need to really talk about them. I don't need to really keep saying the same things about this uninspiring football team.
I'm going to read to you the Chargers offensive line in their practice yesterday. At left tackle, Jamari Sawyer. Left guard, Zion Johnson. Centers, Bradley Bozeman. Mekhi Becton, Trey Pipkins. Man, we have come such a long, long way from being like, at least they have Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt. They had the Austin Deculus, Trevor Penning experiment for like a week and a half, and we're like, enough of that. We're not doing that ever again.
Salary college tackle. He can maybe still kick it there.
Yeah, I mean, they've moved him from right guard to right tackle to left tackle. Like, he's played everywhere for them this season. Kudos to him. But if the Raiders are going to make this game competitive, Max Crosby is going to have to just dominate this game. They're going to have to dominate this game up front. They're going to be getting Amari and Hampton back, so I wonder if they lean more on the ground game, if they try and get something going with Hampton to turn down that pass rush a little bit. But like you said, the Raiders are in firm like Titans territory where like I don't trust anything coming out of this offense, coming out of this brain trust, especially against the Chargers defense that kicks bad teams' ass.
The Raiders, the only interesting thing about the Raiders going forward, because they're going to probably roll over and play dead for the Chargers, Broncos, Eagles, Texans coming up in their schedule. But then they got a Week 17 meeting with the New York Giants that could decide maybe the number 2 overall pick, maybe the number 1 overall pick. We'll see. But that game's going to have a lot riding on it. And by a lot, I mean draft order. Because currently at 2-9, they sit 5th. They are not going to win any tiebreakers. Their strength of schedule is too good and only going to get harder down the stretch with those teams I mentioned, and then the Chiefs in Week 18. So Raiders, you're playing for the Ty Simpson, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza sweepstakes at this point, I feel like.
Yeah, one of my locks in this one is Chargers -9.5, mainly just because I don't think the Raiders are going to score a lot of points.
All right, let's go to Cardinals at Bucks. Bucks. This one hurts. 3-point favorites at home over a Cardinals team. 44.5 points. Baker Mayfield and his status obviously still up in the air at this point.
So I wanted to ask you, if you are the Buccaneers and Baker just clearly like arm in a sling, we saw him try and throw and he's wincing every time he throws. Is it worth just letting him rest this week against the Bucks or against the Cardinals, even though you're still sort of in the heat of a playoff race, but you also know the Panthers scored 9 points against the 49ers last week?
It's tough because you are in the worst division in the NFC, like far and away. Really, all you have to do is take care of the Panthers 2 of the last 3 weeks of the season. Right? If you win those 2 games, that's really all that matters. So I do think if it really is something where, basically every time he goes to the ground, if it's your shoulder, chances are you're going to aggravate it more, even if it's your left one. I would probably be cautious with it and just have my focus directly on, I believe it's the Week 16, the Week 18 game against the Carolina Panthers, because that's it. That's your season. You win those 2 games. That's all you really need from here on out.
Yeah, like this is a game where I don't think, I'm not going to say it's not worth it, but if you're Baker Mayfield and you have Arizona, New Orleans, Atlanta, next 3 games, all at home. The only one on a short week is the Thursday night game against the Falcons. And then you finish with Carolina and Miami in the last 3 weeks. I feel like you should just get as close to 100% as possible to take the Panthers games over the last 2 of the last 3 weeks. But I also think that you run the risk of, like, you can't screw around against these Cardinals. You can't screw around with them having a quarterback who is playing like Jacoby Brissett with a clean pocket, and with the Bucs defense looking like it is without any true legitimate pass rush help. One thing that Jacoby Brissett can do is, with a clean pocket off play action, he can throw the ball downfield. He is going to create explosive plays. Michael Wilson has been incredible. Trey McBride has been incredible. Marvin Harrison Jr., when healthy, has been incredible with Jacoby Brissett in the lineup because they're going to throw the ball downfield and create explosives in the middle of the field area. So if you're Baker, I suggest if I'm the Bucs, you probably sit Baker, but I also understand that, like, the Cardinals might screw around and win this game because of that's just how injured the Bucs are on the defensive side of the ball.
Oh, if it's Teddy versus the Cardinals, I'm taking the Cardinals. I think right now I trust that offense a lot more. Shoot, even if Baker's playing, like their offense has looked a little better than the Bucs in recent weeks. So yeah, but like the thing really is, though, it just like doesn't really matter. Like it's not a big game for you. You have such an easy stretch to end the season after this that you want him fully healthy. The last 3 weeks matter more. And obviously the playoffs are what matters the most. So if you're going to keep getting him hampered heading into the playoffs, I just don't think it's worth it. Give him whatever time he needs to heal up and then hope you can weather the storm in the meantime. All right, let's get to Jags at Titans. Jaguars 6.5-point favorites. 41.5 points is the over-under. Jags have the 3rd biggest playoff swing with a win and a loss. Obviously, don't think a lot of people think they're going to lose this game, but 83% chance with the win, 49% chance with a loss, And the Titans currently, they have a 40% chance of ending up with the number 1 overall pick.
Please don't screw around in this game. Please don't screw around.
Make it
because you can't afford to screw around anymore if you're the Jaguars. Like, you are firmly in the division race. And not only in that, you are firmly in the playoff race. Every game is a must win. You need to win out because of how the wild card's going to shake out this season. I think that they should win. I am curious on if the pass rush can start affecting and getting Cam Ward on the ground. That's the biggest thing. I think the Seahawks got pressure. They didn't bring Cam Ward to the ground. I think the Jaguars have to bring Cam Ward to the ground. They're going to throw a lot of stuff at him pressure-wise. Anthony Campanelli's done such a great job with just mixing up coverages and pressure looks. Of course, he comes from Jeff Hafley and Carolina. They play a lot of quarter, half, and they just mix up a lot of stuff when it comes to what they show up front. So I think they can win this game, but it's going to require defense getting Cam Ward on the ground, and you cannot have meltdowns like Trevor Lawrence had on Sunday against the Cardinals.
Yeah, this one just feels like I don't want to say business as usual, but like, don't make the really big mistake. Don't give up the terrible bonehead interception. Don't give up the kicker punt return. Like, don't do that. And this should be an easy win for the Jaguars.
Something to note, since coming back, Britton Strange, 5 catches for 93 yards. Britton Strange is so important to this offense. Uber important just in his ability to turn underneath plays into explosives via yards after the catch. Without Travis Hunter in the game, you don't really have that explosive yak threat. Travis Etienne is a very fun receiver, but you need a tight end that can do the stuff that he does. I think the Jaguars are going to try and get into 12 personnel. They're going to try and get into pony personnel, try and get into some 21 personnel looks to keep Britton Strange on the field. So I think the Jaguars win. I want to see them get Strange involved. I want to see them be just a little more efficient, because if you took out the interceptions and the weirdness of the interceptions last week, the Jaguars passing offense is actually kind of trending upwards. So if you could just play a clean game, and just be a playoff team, look like a playoff team against a bad team, you're going to inspire a lot of confidence.
Yeah, I hope after this season they do the quick extension on Strange. This is year 3 for him. He obviously has never put up big, gaudy numbers, so you price tag on him probably won't be massive at this point. But when you just watch him on tape, it's very obvious to see that not only is this guy incredibly talented and his explosiveness, the tight end position jumps out, but he's reliable. And he actually is one of the few that doesn't drop passes in that Jaguars receiving core. And it's just that's a guy you want to just keep long term. Just keep that pairing going with Trevor Lawrence and just let that rapport build as much as you can, because all the guys that can actually catch, you want to hold on to for dear life if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars at this point. Let's get to 49ers Browns. 49ers 5.5 point favorites. 37.5 points is the over under. This is one of my locks. I think the 49ers have to win by 5.5 or more. They just have so much more riding on this game. 93% playoff chance with a win, 77% playoff chance with a loss. And then obviously the Browns, they are firmly in the mix for a top 5 pick at this point. 3-8, kind of on the outside looking in though. But they obviously have both of those first rounders, not only theirs, but Jacksonville's, which currently sits at 22. Theirs sits at number 6. So
I think Brock Purdy has gone a little bit crazy this season. Not only this season, but the 3 interceptions he threw against the Panthers were all on the same route. All the same thing happened on all of them. He left every middle of the field pass late over the middle of the field, and he got baited into interceptions. Just don't be dumb. Just relax. And I think that the 49ers can win this game. But I do wonder just how amped up he's going to be, how wound up he's going to be going up against one of the best pass rushers in football, one of the best pass rushers we've ever seen in Myles Garrett. And Myles Garrett's probably going to line up a lot over Colton McKivitz.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just not going to be a great time for McKivitz. I think they have guys who can win 1v1. Even if Myles Garrett, if you try and double Myles Garrett, they have guys who can win in 1v1 situations. If I'm betting anything, I think this is an under game because that's just how good I think the Browns defense is. And I just think Brock Purdy's going to throw him one. I think he's just going to throw them an interception. He's thrown multiple games this season.
And when he's one of those guys where, given his level of arm strength, I think we put him in the pop gun category when we ranked arm strength. You can't be late. Like you can't be late if you don't. Like Justin Herbert can be late. Josh Allen can be late. And they probably will get away with it more often than not. You can't be late if you're Brock Purdy. You don't have the arm to stick it in there, especially over in the middle of the football field. I do think though the Garrett conversation or just what they do with him is going to be interesting because he's obviously ever since his freshman year at Texas A&M, he's been more comfortable against left tackles. He has been a right defensive end. They will put him on the other side when it's a favorable matchup. Obviously, Trent Williams versus Colton McKivitz, one of those is a lot more attractive, but they never really go all in. At least they haven't this season on him playing. He moves around still. So I wonder what the game plan is for Myles Garrett because, again, Trent's one of the few guys who is fully capable. No one's fully capable, but the most capable at actually mirroring someone like Myles Garrett. Colton McKivitz, on the other hand, will be a speed bump for someone like Myles Garrett.
Yeah, Trent Williams is one of the only guys at the position that's athletic enough to match Myles Garrett and technically refined enough to match Myles Garrett's technical prowess. So I just think if you move him around, I think Mason Graham could have a big game. I think you have a big game from Lee Collins. I just really think this Browns defense is going to keep this game close.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're going to make the game very interesting. I don't know what Shedeur Sanders is going to look like against a much better defense. So we'll have to see. But I do think this game is going to be a little bit grimy.
Yeah, I think Robert Saleh's licking his chops. I'm curious to see what he has dialed up for Shedeur. And I just bet this is a massive Christian McCaffrey game. I bet Christian McCaffrey goes for 30-plus touches in this game. The game plan, when the pass rush is down as it is, run the heck out of the football, screen game, swing pass, just never let anyone else touch the ball in that 49ers offense. I bet if they do score, like if they are to move the ball down the football field, and I bet it's a low-scoring game, it's because of a lot of touches for McCaffrey.
So it's just like any other 49ers
okay, just like every
in this season.
Sorry, yeah.
This is a normal Sunday for Christian McCaffrey.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. After that, a few more games to hit from the Sunday night, Monday night, and then we're going to get to the Thanksgiving and Black Friday games.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, Saints at Dolphins. Dolphins 5.5-point favorites. 42.5 points is the over-under. Interesting note here. Saints currently number 3 in the draft order. They will, though, because they have the easiest strength of schedule in the NFL going forward. They will win any tiebreaker in the strength of record because it goes record first. And then once it's record, it's strength of schedule. But it's whoever has the easiest strength of schedule, the opposite of playoffs, which is who has the hardest strength of schedule. So the Saints will be winning that. So they'll be at the top of any pecking order if records are tied at the end of the year.
I feel like the Dolphins are going to win this game, which also makes me think the Dolphins are going to think they're a lot closer to the playoffs than they actually are. Because the Dolphins' schedule for the rest of the season is New Orleans. They play a game against the Jets. They play Steelers, Bengals, Bucks, Patriots. Like, I feel like they're going to finish the season around like 8-9, maybe 9-8, maybe 7-10. And they're going to think they're just a lot better than they actually are, which is going to make them be complacent. But I do think they they just blow this Saints team out. I just think they have too much on offense. One of my locks is Devon Achan's over on rushing yards. And I feel like he's going to break off a few explosives in this game.
No Alvin Kamara, I believe, in this game. He sprained his MCL, could be out a while here for the Saints. Unfortunately, that could be the end of the Saints era with Alvin Kamara. We'll see what happens with him at 30 years old. I'm with you, though. This one, the Dolphins almost feel, I don't want to say they have something to play for, because they don't. They don't have anything to play for. If they rattle off 6 wins, they're not eliminated. I think their playoff odds with the win here is something like 3%. But it feels like Mike McDaniel could keep his job after this. I feel like there's a real world, given the timeline between firing Chris Greer and now, and how things have bounced back to a degree. I think there was a world where Mike McDaniel is your head coach in Miami next year.
I think so too. And I think it's largely, most of it's because the only offense Tua is good in, or at least competent in, is in the Mike McDaniel offense. Yes. That is the best way you can get that quarterback to win. And because they're winning more games, I don't think they're going to find themselves in the QB sweepstakes this season. So you're kind of stuck with him. So if you're just going to try and make this work right now, then like you might as well stick with the guy that you know the quarterback works best with in this offense. But the team has played hard. They haven't quit this season like I thought they would. And that's a large testament to what Mike McDaniel brings as the head coach.
All right, let's get to Falcons at Jets. Falcons 2.5-point favorites. 39.5 points is the over-under here. Jets are currently slated to pick 4th overall. Falcons have the 11th overall pick, but that one's obviously getting traded to the Rams as part of that James Pierce deal. Kirk Cousins, obviously your starter here for Atlanta.
This game feels very sleepy. This feels like a very sleepy game. I think the Falcons win because the Jets are awful, but I do think that there's potential for some of the young guys for both the Falcons and the Jets to really step up. Billy Bowman tore his Achilles in practice, going to be done for the season, which really sucks because he was one of those young Atlanta defenders that was playing really well this season. So you just hope in this game you kind of get some more reps for the young guys on defense. You hope that the Jets can get some more reps for the youth on both sides of the ball for them. But I do think the Falcons just have more talent than the Jets right now, and they'll probably win this game.
Yeah, this feels like one when you're sitting down and you're building the quad box on YouTube TV. You're building, the 4 multi-view, and you're going through the games. You're like, that one's not making the cut. that one's not getting a part of the quad box. We'll check on that one if I flip onto Red Zone at some point, but that one ain't making the cut, unfortunately. But yeah, this one has more draft implications. But unfortunately, the Falcons, they really don't have draft picks to play for. So I think they end up winning the game. But I'm staying away from betting anything on that. Now let's get to Broncos at Commanders. Broncos 6.5-point favorites. 43.5 points is the over-under. This is Sunday Night Football. It's also one of my locks. I like the under 43.5 in this one.
This is also one of my locks. I like the Broncos minus 6.5.
There you go.
I think they just punched this Commanders offense in the mouth. Honestly, I think that they just have too many guys on the defensive side of the ball. They're going to get a lot of pressure with Jonathan Cooper and Nick Bonito. I think their interior guys have played so well. I wanted to shout out Iomio Uwazurike on the interior of the defense. They have a bunch of guys that sort of offset how light they play on the edge because they have a guy like Uwazurike. They have John Franklin Myers, who are 5 techs, but they are heavy 5s. They can play in that 5-man front in between the guard and the tackle, but they can also, if you want to shift your defensive line, they can play out over the tackle and be heavy in the run game. So it prevents your edges from getting hammered constantly. That's an issue that they had last season. But I do think that this Broncos offense will find enough. I do think I'm starting to come around on the Broncos a little bit. I was real skeptical of just overall, how their operation, how sustainable it was. I did call them the 2018 Bears, but I think the win against Kansas City showed me that, some of this fourth quarter stuff is real. Some of the ways that they win are very real. So I'm coming around on the Broncos. I think they dominate in this game. And, 1 seed still in play for Denver. And if they get the 1 seed, it's going to be hard to go to Mile High and play against that defense in a 1-game scenario.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with the Broncos in this one. Jaden Daniels doesn't look like he'll be playing Pat Surtain could play coming out of the bye, but I imagine they'll probably give him another week after this, given that he hasn't practiced yet. Give me the Broncos and give me the under. Let's get to Monday Night Football, where the Giants travel in New England, face the Patriots. 7.5-point favorites, New England is. 46.5 points is the over-under. And I found this very interesting. The Patriots have not only faced the easiest slate of offenses in the NFL so far this season, and by far, in terms of EPA per play against, they've also faced the 5th easiest slate of defenses. And now they have the 2nd easiest strength of schedule in the NFL going forward. Talk about an absolute charm season. They played the AFC North, which turned out to be the worst division in the AFC by far. They played the NFC South, which turned out to be the worst division in the NFC by far. They obviously are in the AFC East, which is probably the 2nd worst division in the AFC. And then their team that they faced in the, whatever that is, the lineup 17th game, is this one, the New York Giants.
I honestly feel like this game could get a little hairy for the Patriots at first because you don't have Will Campbell, you don't have Jared Wilson. You don't have your starting left guard, left tackle. And if you're going to try and drop back against this Giants team that has 4 legitimate pass rushers, I feel like they can make this game a little bit scary for them. I do think the Patriots end up winning this one in the end. I just think that they have too much, both on offense and defense, to really rely on to win this game late in the game. I don't know if Jackson Dart actually plays. Which, if Dart plays, maybe it gets a little more reckless. I mean, even if Jameis plays, like, this game can get real weird.
I was going to say, I don't think that them right now, both those quarterbacks, it's like, in my head, there's just zero difference between them in terms of how I feel about the Giants. I'm like, yep, they're the exact same either way.
They're going to make it really weird. And the fact that you said that's really funny because I remember, like, in the pre-draft process, the one quarterback Jackson Dart said he wanted to work out with was Jameis Winston. And I was like, that's a red flag. That is the most red flag for franchise quarterback ever. You want to work out and be buddies with Jameis Winston. You're throwing 80 interceptions in a season. But I do think that this game might be a little bit close because the Patriots are banged up on their offensive line. But I do think they find a way to win.
All right, let's get to the Black Friday game. The good ones here. Bears at Eagles. Eagles somehow 7-point favorites. 44.5 points is the over-under, but obviously some big playoff implications here. Eagles almost a lock at this point. It doesn't really hurt their odds too much with the loss, but the Bears, 77% chance of making the playoffs with a win, only 50% with a loss, so a lot at stake here for Chicago going forward.
I know we keep saying it about the Eagles. If they can't get their run game going against the Chicago Bears without all of their linebackers, it is so over. It is major, super, mega over for them if they can't get that run game going against Chicago. But I do think that this is a really big test for the Bears offense. And it's because Ben Johnson and the Bears, we've said, they built this offense on explosives. They built it on chunk plays. They want to go to the ATM, check out big bills only. 20-yard passes to Roma Dunze, 30-yard passes to Luther Burden. The issue is, I think some of the Bears receivers, also Caleb Williams, but some of the Bears skill position players, there's some drops, there's some lack of focus sometimes, and there's just some overall inaccuracies by Caleb Williams that if you're not hitting on those 20 to 30-yard chunks, you're going to find yourself in 2nd and long. You're going to find yourself in 3rd and long. And now you're putting yourself in less favorable situations because it's dangerous to be in 3rd and long against this Eagles team, especially with the way they can get after the passer in standard drop back situations. But what the Eagles like to do is they want to force you to eat your vegetables on offense. They want to force you into 5 and 6 yard passes. They want to force you to play their game. So I wonder what's going to give first for that matchup. Is Caleb Williams going to have to make the game a little bit more efficient by taking checkdowns underneath passes? Or are the Eagles going to get a little bit too aggressive and try and play the chaos game with the NFL's king of chaos?
This game features the 2 quarterbacks with the highest time to throw in the NFL. Caleb Williams is at 3.29 seconds. As we've talked about, they've leaned into the play action game, just the max pro game to give him the time needed to do the things Caleb does best. And then Jalen Hurts at 3.15 seconds. And they're both top 5 in average depth of target, which kind of tracks with that stat. 7 points is just way too much. The Eagles have covered 7 points once this entire season. Once. That was against the Giants. Man. They have not beat a team by more than 7 points except the New York Giants. This is not a team that looks currently built to blow anyone out. I wanted to make the Bears one of my locks. I just can't do it from my soul. But it feels like the Bears, it feels like this is going to be a close game, like every Eagles game.
Yeah, this feels like another close game. I think the Eagles defense has enough to force Caleb Williams into playing their game. But if the Eagles can't figure it out offensively against the Bears, who have turned the ball over at a really high rate for the last few weeks, like if they can get turnovers, this game could end up going the Bears' way, because this also features 2 teams with incredible records in one-score games this season. So who knows what'll happen? This is a unstoppable force versus immovable object. I'm going to lean Eagles here because I think their defense forces Caleb Williams into some volatility. But I do think there's a world where the Eagles lose this game. And if they lose 2 straight to the Cowboys and the Bears, Philadelphia radio is going to look like Gotham.
I won't tweet about it because my mentions will be an absolute disaster. But yeah, it would be panic button time for Philly. Let's take a break. After that, the Thanksgiving threesome. Coming up next.
Critics agree Landman is a hit.
We roll the dice one last time.
Men die. Oil companies don't.
I think threesome was a questionable choice of words there before the break. Just know I meant the 3 games on Thanksgiving and nothing else. Packers at Lions. Lions 2.5-point favorites. 49.5 points is the over under. The playoff implications here, they're big. Packers, 93% chance of making the playoffs with a win, 68% with a loss. That's a big difference. Lions, 88% with a win, 56% with a loss. Basically, winner of this game is kind of in the driver's seat for the NFC North going forward. Sorry, Chicago. We just talked about them, but they are.
So if we're using week 1's loss to the Packers to inform us about this game for the Lions, I do think that the Lions are going to come out with a lot different of a game plan. I think they tried to this was an interesting game. Week 1 was a very interesting game for the Lions. The Packers held them to their lowest outputs of the season running the football. I believe when the Lions just straight up tried to run the ball against the Packers, Green Bay held Detroit to their lowest output of the season in rushing yards, EPA per carry, adjusted yards before contact, all of the like. So I do think they found the formula to stopping the Lions' run game through some slanting, through changing gaps. But where the Packers have been vulnerable has been hitting them with 12 personnel, 13 personnel, getting them into their bigger fronts because they're just a light defense, like physically, and just sort of hammering them. I think the Vikings did that a lot with a lot of success on Sunday. They just didn't have a quarterback who could hit the broadside of a barn. But I do think this game also leans more into the something's got to give sort of game, because the Packers have been really good at defending dagger, defending those middle of the field concepts. They defend dagger better than almost any team in the NFL. And that's something that Jared Goff likes to throw. I like to call it Jared Goff is the king of the 12-yard dig. He loves throwing that route, but the Packers are really good at taking away those routes via inverted Tampa 2. They're gonna rotate Evan Williams down to sort of cut off that dig route. They're gonna play a lot of different coverages to take away the middle of the field. So I'm curious how this works out for the Lions, because this is for the division. Honestly, this is a division title game at this point.
I think it's really going to come down to who plays too. There are so many notable injuries, so many guys whose status is currently up in the air for both sides. To roll through them here real quick, we have Carl Brooks, Lucas Van Ness, Savion Williams didn't practice. We have Javon Bullard, Edgerrin Cooper, Marcus Golden, Nate Hobbs, Josh Jacobs, Jaden Reed, Zach Tom, Quay Walker, Dontavian Wicks, and Keyshawn Nixon all limited in practice. Now, this would be Jaden Reed's first game back. Hopefully, Quay Walker comes back. He had a monster game week 1. A lot of their ability to shut down the Lions came from basically holding Jahmyr Gibbs to, like, I think it was 2.9 yards per carry and 3.1 yards per reception. So basically, he was not getting those yards after catch that he's so good at. So need those linebackers to play. On the flip side, Graham Glasgow didn't practice. You're already on a backup guard at left guard, could be on a backup at center too. Kirby Joseph didn't practice either. Taron Arnold, Taylor Decker, Tate Ratledge, Penei Sewell, Isaac Tesla, all limited in practice. So literally your entire starting offensive line either limited or out in this game for the Lions heading in. But Marcus Davenport may be back to add some pressure there to the Lions packages.
So I did see that Kirby Joseph isn't going to play on Thanksgiving. He is not playing. He'll come back later. But I do think that Davenport coming back is huge for them. They need some sort of pass rush, as do I think Jaden Reed coming back helps out this Packers offense, because they just need somebody to separate against man coverage. They need somebody who can create some juice against man coverage. They don't really have guys like that. They have a lot of specialists, and without Tucker Kraft, you don't have the go-to guy against man coverage. Jaden Reed coming back, that'd be huge. I still am sort of curious about if Jordan Love is healthy. Like, I still want to see that. But even in that first game of the season, Jordan Love was really good at diagnosing pressure, and he did a good job of that against the Vikings, sort of diagnosing where pressure was coming from, how he was attacking those looks that Brian Flores was giving him. I think this is going to be a really tight game. It's going to be a really intense game because of how week 1 went. I still kind of think the Lions win this one, though, because you have to split. When these teams are as tightly contested as they are, when they're as evenly balanced as they are, I think they split.
I think the Packers win. I do. I think the injuries up front on the interior of that offensive line are the big thing. Graham Glasgow doesn't play. That basically zaps the one area where I feel the worst about this Packers defense, is just being able to lean on these DTs and basically walk the ball down the field via the run. Don't think that's going to be the case if you have backups there. And I don't, and I think in drop back pass situations, they are going to be under siege by those Packers linebackers and blitzing. So give me the Packers to cover and win outright, obviously. All right, Chiefs at Cowboys. Chiefs 3.5-point favorites. 52.5 points is the over-under. Chiefs 73% chance to make the playoffs if they win this one. 43% chance with a loss. 21% chance for the Cowboys with a win, and a 5% with a loss.
This game is going to be such a fascinating one to watch.
I love this game. Such
like, it's going to be super cool because I think these are two quarterbacks playing among the best in the NFL. I know that Patrick Mahomes, I've said that he sort of doesn't trust like his receiver core, his offensive line. There's a lot of stuff going on right now at Mahomes and what that offensive infrastructure is like. But against zone coverage, he's shredding right now. Like, he has been so impressive, creating voids, creating windows. And I think that this Chiefs offense works better when you get a lot of zone coverage. That's what the Cowboys do. The Cowboys plays a lot of zone coverage. I don't think they trust their defensive backs in man coverage, which, I mean, I really wouldn't either outside of maybe DeRon Bland. But they play a lot of zone coverage. I wonder, without Trey Smith, is this a Quinnen Williams takeover game? If Quinnen Williams makes this game really uncomfortable for Patrick Mahomes, I do think the Cowboys have a shot. But I wonder how the Chiefs address a defensive line that's sort of been revitalized. They've been revamped with Quinnen Williams coming in.
And Quinnen Williams himself has been revamped. He had 19 pressures in a Jets uniform this season. In 2 games with the Cowboys, 15 pressures. He has been dominating. And like you said, that's the matchup that flips it for me and why this is actually one of my locks. Cowboys to cover 3.5, especially if I'm getting the 3 there. Backup guards. I guess not backup at left guard, backup at right guard for Trey Smith, and left guard was obviously already kind of an issue. Against Quinnen Williams playing the way he is, I think he is going to be more impactful than I would bet Chris Jones is in this game. And Cowboys, I think, have struggled when you have a really high-end pass rush. I think they're going to be able to do their drop back stuff, their 5-out stuff they want to do offensively. And then when you have that, when you get that with Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, just good luck to any defense, especially the Chiefs, whose secondary is just like, it's not anything special outside of, gosh, why am I blanking on his name?
McDuffie.
Trent McDuffie there. So I like the Cowboys a lot in this one.
So I think the spin zone for the Chiefs defense is Chris Jones has been incredible the last couple of weeks. 6 pressures against Broncos, 4 huge pressures against the Colts, and just he made impact as a run defender as well. But this is an amazing interior offensive line he's going to go up against. Tyler Smith, Tyler Booker's playing really well. I do wonder about the health of Tyler Guyton at left tackle, but the Chiefs defense also hasn't really given up explosives. They didn't give up explosives in that Colts game. So I wonder what gives first. Because the Chiefs are also pretty good at defending the run when they're in base defense, when they have 3 linebackers on the field, but they also aren't very good at defending play action. So does this become a play action and Dak shreds type of game? Or if you just think you can throw the ball on this team, just go 5 out, because like you said, the Chiefs pass rush without Chris Jones is sort of lackluster. But I do wonder if you get early Chris Jones takeover, this is going to be a game where I do think it's going to be a tightly contested one, going to be come down to the end of the game. And I honestly don't know who I trust more in end of game scenarios, because on one side you have the most automatic kicker in the NFL. On the other side, you have Patrick Mahomes, where no lead is safe. So I think this game is going to be amazing.
I do. Like I said, this Thanksgiving slate is a tremendous one, and it ends with Bengals at Ravens in the Joe Burrow-led Bengals, because he is confirmed playing. Ravens are 7-point favorites. 51.5 points is the over-under. Now, while Burrow's playing, T. Higgins won't be. Trey Hendrickson won't be. Lamar was doing his normal thing he does now, which is not practice the first day of the week, limited in practice the next day of the week. So obviously still not 100%. It showed on the football field with him. Kyle Hamilton, Rashad Bateman, both limited in their own right. We'll see if they play on a short week. All that being said, I still like the Ravens here. I just don't know if 7, though. 7's a lot, especially if Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are on the other side.
Which is why one of my locks is Bengals +7.
There you go.
The Ravens, despite getting Lamar back, have not been the face-melting offense that we've seen last year. Mm-hmm. And I think, again, a large part of it is because their interior offensive line has just been shredded. They just haven't been able to generate any push between the tackles.
Does that matter against the Bengals?
That's the problem, though. The Bengals will make sure that they look like the greatest show on turf. So I do wonder what happens there. And then without the full complement of receivers, they're just going to buddy ball Jamar and Joe Burrow, but can Zach Orr find a game plan that sort of nullifies Jamar Chase's impact on the game? Can you help? Can you rotate your coverage because T. Higgins is out of the game and force Joe Burrow to go other ways? But also, can you get some unblocked pressures? I think Zach Orr has done a really good job since the bye week of scheming up unblocked pressures. I think during the bye he talked to Mike McDonald and sort of got that he went back to the source for the defense. So I think the Ravens win. Yeah, I think he had to go back to the OG of it. But I think the Ravens win, but I do think this is a close game because I think Joe Burrow and the Bengals are going to score points.
Man, this game was the 2 games these teams played last year were 2 of the best games we saw all season long. They were so good. And it just feels – I feel like this is almost a modicum of this season, is that a lot of games just kind of feels like a shell of what they could have been. This could have been just such a sick game. Even if Burrow is going to be playing in this, it still feels like it's lost some luster from the games we saw last year. All right. Let's recap our locks and let's get out of here. JP has the Chargers -9.5, Bengals +7, Broncos -6.5, Devon A. Chan going over 77.5 rushing yards, George Pickens going over 71.5 receiving yards. I love that one. Hopefully he's healthy. He's going to deal with calf and a knee. I love the Packers versus Lions under 49.5. I think both teams are going to try to ground and pound a little in that one. So a little game script action. Washington Broncos under as well. I don't think Washington scores many points. The 49ers covering 5.5 against the Browns. The Cowboys covering 3.5 against the Chiefs. And then Kyle's going Bears +7. Of course he is. The Jacksonville Titans under 41.5. Chris Olave going over 70.5 receiving yards. And then Myles Garrett getting over 1.5 sacks. A crazy prop to bet, especially at even odds. But darn it, it may very well hit. That was the locks. Sponsored by Cash App. As you may heard me say at the top of the show, new Cash App users can use our code to get free money. Use our code PUSHING. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You'll get $10 right in your account. Thank you, Cash App. And thank you to you guys for tuning in. We will be back, it's a while from now, Sunday. We'll be back Sunday night, recapping all of the weekend's action. Until then, keep pushing.